So, 2020 was a year. For those of you living in the future, 2019 was a pretty great year everyone thought was an awful year, only because they had no idea how 2020 would turn out. Wildfires, debates, violent riots, global pandemics, take your pick. On this year of all years, I'd probably be forgiven for making a top 5 instead of a top 10 and be given a pass on explaining it, but I feel it's only fair to impart the reasons behind this decision. 2020 was a difficult year for all of us, and a particularly active one for me, with multiple bits of real life consuming most of my time. Despite that, I played more than enough games to fill in slots for a top 10, but there were all these complications, like I played every single Mario Party game ever this year. Where do I slot them in? Is only one game allowed? Where does it go? How do I choose? Is it the best of the lot or the one that represents the most? I think 6 might be the best Mario Party game ever made, but I can't guarantee it because I haven't tried the 3 or 4 player and haven't seen all the main games or even played on all the map, each of which is entirely different than the other, so can I even count it? Problems like that, among plenty of others. Does the Henry Stickmin collection count as one game, or 6? I played the first 5 back when they were Flash games, do I only count completing the mission? If that's counted by itself, does it break into the top 10? Well, what about Pokemon remakes? Sure, they're remakes, but they change a lot. Add in other games that have me get enough time to know how I generally feel, but not enough to solidify that entire ranking, and it just ended up being so much less stressful to condense this into my 5 favorites. Helped us get this out in a timely manner too. Wouldn't that be something? Who even knows what 2021 will be like? I'm just hoping I can play at least one new RPG in that year. Not that the Xenoblade remake wasn't amazing, but being shut away from sunlight for years turned me into a vampire. I crave fresh blood. No recycled fluids allowed. See, if this list was going to be controversial, here's a part where I could connect it all back with the James joke about you having to raise stakes against me, and you'd see I'm more than a rambler. But controversy implies general consensus, and general consensus implies something to consense over. It's just been a rough year for everyone, man. If you haven't seen my previous lists, now's the time you'd want to reread that YouTube title. That's played in 2020, not came out in 2020. Because otherwise I'd have to own the likes of Cyberpunk and Miles Morales, and I'm sorry, you just cannot get me to care about the PS5 before Horizon Forbidden West comes out. After that, it'll be a whole different story, I promise you. The key thing to take away from this mindless ramble here is that so long as I played it for the first time, it doesn't matter what the game is, it's free pickings. And hey, we might live in 2020, but at least we don't live in the world of Sunless Sea. You have to look at the bright side of every situation. Except for this game, where there quite literally is no bright side. I'm always up for a naval adventure, and normally that goes one of 2 ways. The first way is the piratey one. Yes, I do quite love that one. But then there's the second one, the one about surviving and trading and being lost at sea in darkness with monsters creeping in on you, and it is quite rare to get a game like that of a high caliber. In that way, Sunless Sea is everything I wanted and a little more. Think of it sort of as Sid Meier's Pirates mixed with Rogue Legacy. You, your crew, and your dinky vessel go out into the vast, dark waters to find islands and communities, establish trade, bring information back to base, fight monsters, and unlock the mysteries of each and every location. While close to home, you might find an expensive but friendly port town, or maybe something as normal as a group of 3 sisters that secretly have connections with literal gods of the sea. Out in the dark, sunless waters, who knows what you'll find? It could be a section filled with islands made of mushrooms, inhabited by men that become part fungus themselves from all the spores. Or a city that creates soulless clay humans, animated for slave labor, led by a king who keeps dangerously to himself. Or an island where you can assist in a civil war between rats and hamsters, and potentially create a new kingdom. Anything can happen. The trading aspect encourages you to explore and make frequent journeys, but discovering new locations also earns you rewards. And everywhere you go, there's at least one quest to be picked up or fulfilled. There is a lot to do in this game, and you won't accomplish it in one lifetime. When your ship sinks and your captain dies, they leave certain things behind for their successors. Maybe their ship, or their fortune, or just the map they forged along the way. The more you accomplish, the more your progeny starts with, and the closer you get towards solving the sea's great mysteries. Not that the story ends there, there's so much more you can do, like take a bunch of zombies on the world's biggest reef tour, forge deals with the London underground market, or create a port of your own on the one island in the world that the sun still shines on. Just try not to encounter any eldritch horrors, or find yourself on the side of the sea where the nation you're warring with lives. There's a lot to accomplish here, but the true spirit of the game comes during those times when you underestimate what supplies you need for your journey. When you realize halfway through that you don't know where this island you need to get to is. When you're slowly being chased down by a sea monster in the dark. No islands, no signs of life in sight, losing fuel and food, your crew slowly gaining more and more fear until you begin to hallucinate and you stumble upon a small rock and... oh, that's not a rock. And that doesn't even touch the expansion pack, where you get to dive underwater and find all sorts of wonderful, terrifying things to do. Just maybe tone down the cannibalism a bit, guys. 20%? Yeah, 20% sounds good. Stress eating isn't always the right call here. Every time I make one of these lists, you know I have to fit in the previous year's giant mega indie game in somewhere on there. First there was Undertale, then Cuphead, then Celeste. This year, however, it's slightly different. There was no insanely major indie release everybody frothed over. There was, however, a major indie discovery everyone frothed over. And you know what? That's more than good enough for me. It may or may not surprise you to know that I obsess over all types of games, not just video games. The amount of times I wished I could make a video of some board games would probably make you question my sanity. Yeah, I mean, we made the one, but look at that camera. Recording competitive physical games is just so time-consuming, difficult to edit, requires multiple angles, takes twice as long to play the stupid game because you need to know everyone's cards at every point, and how do you even structure the UI? I don't know. It's no wonder that there are very few channels of this style on YouTube, but that's a shame because since the game came out, I have been championing hard for a video of us playing One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Now I no longer need to, because Among Us isn't only easily recorded and just as entertaining to watch, but also a much better game. And that's saying a lot if you know how much I love One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I did hesitate for quite some time in landing Among Us on my top 5, but honestly the moment you take the fun had factor into it, it almost feels shameful for this game to not have made the top 3. Yes, the world will likely forget about Among Us in the following months, but these past few have been such a great experience that I honestly don't care. Among Us is a game of deception. There are up to 10 players, and you can play online, but no. Play with friends if it's possible. It is so much better. And 2 of those will be imposters. The normal 8, the crewmates, finish tasks set up all around the map, completing little micro games and going from place to place. If everyone finishes their selection tasks, the crewmates survive, win, everyone comes out happy. But the imposter doesn't have tasks. Instead, they can kill crew members and leave their corpses where they once stood and cause sabotages on the ship, forcing crew to gather in one area or face dire consequences. Imposters win if the amount of crewmates and imposters ever become equal. Here's the thing though. Another way for the crew to win is to call a meeting, either by reporting a dead body or pressing a central button, and vote out people they think are the imposters. So you have to be slow and careful in your imposter ways, because if you're caught, it's all over. Or if you have a silver ton, maybe not. The conversations and arguments that arise from accusations and attempts to retrace steps leads to confusion and suspicion on everyone, and a skilled imposter can easily turn things against a crewmate, allowing others to do the dirty work for them. You have to look innocent or else you'll be voted out, but also slightly suspicious, or else the imposters won't have a reason not to kill you, and that balance is almost impossible to attain. Then we make some things like visual tasks that confirm somebody's crew, security cameras that can catch imposters in action, or anonymous voting that allows imposters to secretly vote together without seeming suspicious. All optional. It gets crazy and all the more fun. The amount of pure options at your disposal is incredible. How about a taskbar that only updates when a meeting is called, or make it so imposters have better vision than crew? Maybe turn confirm ejects off so you don't know if the person everyone voted to throw out the airlock was actually the imposter or not. Movement speed, median length, the amount of tasks, the length of tasks, even the distance an imposter has to be from a player to kill them, they can all be adjusted to your liking. It's so extensive you can play entirely different games just by adjusting the options properly. Trust me, because we did. And naturally there's a big modding scene at work, adding things like proximity chat feature or prop hunt mode. The game may only have 3 maps, due to before, but every single round will be wildly different. There's a reason streamers play this for hours every single day for months and still aren't bored of it. Here's hoping 2021's Indie Game of the Year will be close to the level of quality this last batch has been. Do you guys know how close this list came to being all party games? Well, never that close, because I did play the #1 game relatively early in the year, but there was a decent chunk of times where 4 of the 5 games were all party games. I've now cut down to 2, assuming you count Among Us as a party game, but it was a mite harder than you'd think. All this to end by saying, I already mentioned I played every Mario Party game this year. Well, that's not the only major party game franchise I invaded. Jackbox has a reputation attached to it. as a fun, ridiculous party game, yes, but also as an extremely crass experience that decided all humor is only found in inappropriate jokes and unnecessary swearing. Is the stigma true? Doubtful, but it was enough to prevent me from buying or playing any of these until this year. Then I met some people who played and was generally surprised to find out, hey guys, guess what? If course jokes aren't your favorite thing, there's mode to just straight up remove those and leave you with one of the best party games around. Why did I not know this? These games are great! Every Jackbox party pack is just 5 or 6 minigames pulled together that can all be played with friends, even if only one of you actually owns the game. It has a bunch of extra features that make it great for popular streamers, but I didn't qualify for that. I played a lot of the party packs this year, but for my money, 7 is the best by far. You have Quick Flash, which is like Apples to Apples, aka the best card game, except it gives you the ability to write whatever you want on the card. This is amazing. We played it a lot. Blather Round feels so much like a tabletop card game, but it only ever work in video game format. You're given a word and a selection of sentences to describe it, then you can use other people's guesses to make new sentences to describe it. It sounds boring, but this one gets really intense really fast until the timer ticking down suddenly feels like it's a bomb that's going to destroy the planet instead of simply ending your turn. Talking Points was 100 times crazier and more fun than I thought it would be. You all write presentation titles for each other, then someone is selected to give a presentation and someone else to choose the picture slides they're presenting with, while the rest of the players either constantly clap or boo. Best received and most active presentation wins. And seeing someone get stuck with the title Blood, Sweat, Tears, My Life is a Rave Party, followed with the image of a businessman's centaur that they have to work with, leads to some of the highest tension and biggest rounds of applause you're ever likely to see. And even though I want to say they're all the best game, the actual best of the pack is Chammed Up. 2 self-drawn, self-named heroes battle it out in the ring or who is the better champion for random prompt. One player is given the prompt, the other is only given the first player's character. Everyone votes on the winner. This leads to obvious insanity, but the real treat starts in round 2, where you can start swapping out characters and prompts change on the fly. Which is the champion of the middle school play? Is it the cowboy impersonator or the singular male without an identifying name? It's funny, it's well paced, it pretty much just kills it on every level. Oh yeah, and there's the devil in the details. Yeah. Don't play that one. What makes this game work so well is that it caters specifically to every group you play with. You like crass humor, make all the terrible jokes you want. You want to take the game seriously? It still functions really well as a party game if you do. You want a solid hour of Mormon jokes when half the party is Mormon. We can make that happen. We will make that happen. The battle between LittleZbot and Dane's failed bass playing career rages on. The amount of games that came out in 2020 is a staggeringly low amount. It makes sense given current world events, but that has to be real hard on anyone who isn't making a new console filled with launch titles to give to those stuck at home. So, Nintendo. It's hard on Nintendo. The lack of E3 clearly took them by surprise and they had no contingency plans. Everything that was supposed to be revealed on the hypest day of the year instead got randomly thrown at us for a few seconds of excitement. Steve's in Smash now, and that is awesome! But imagine if that trailer randomly showed up in the E3 Direct. The hype would have been twice as through the roof as it already was. Over the big old 35th anniversary for Mario Direct. Surely some of that was definitely harvested from the remnants of the E3 Direct. Then comes the supposed leak that stated Nintendo was planning on releasing a new Zelda game every year of the Switch's lifespan. So far, they've been actually fulfilling this. 2017 had Breath of the Wild, 2018 had
Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition,
and Uno, apparently, and 2019 had Link's Awakening's remake. Fans were expecting Breath of the Wild 2 in 2020 because nobody understands how game development works, but honestly would have settled for anything. What we got instead was pretty special. I mean, Age of Calamity 100% had to be an E3 reveal that got scrapped and thrown onto the internet only a little bit before its release because Nintendo had no idea how to market it, right? I can think of no other reasonable explanation behind the non-existent marketing of this game. It's an odd choice, but luckily the world loved Hyrule Warriors and loved Breath of the Wild even more. A prequel game set in the weeks before the Calamity where you control the 4 champions using the Sheikah Slate to take on literal thousands of monsters with such an easy sell that the game managed to do decently well anyway. But it should have done so much better because Really, this game is kind of amazing. The gameplay is refined from the original, feels so much more fluid. The combo options do get a little crazy, and the button mashing might win a few too many battles, but the moment you're facing a Lionel head-to-head, you could kiss your victory goodbye if you don't have a plan and a good handle on the game mechanics. Incorporating Shield Bash, Flurry Rush, and especially the runes of the Sheikah Slate into things each character can use individually was such a genius move, and each character still feels entirely unique. It's not just the champions in Link, you can also fight as Zelda, take that Sakurai, and a few certain special characters I dare not spoil. That's another thing too. Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, Spirit Tracks. Yeah, you used to have the best stories in the franchise. That trophy's been stolen now. The fact that I need to alert people for spoilers even if they've played Breath of the Wild and know what happens to the characters in this game should speak for itself. I'm always a fan of doing things chronologically instead of by release date, but this is a serious exception. The story is so confusing if you haven't played Breath of the Wild and unlocked every single memory and cutscene, but if you have, I mean, it's the best story in the entire franchise. What more could you ask for? Gameplay is fulfilling, side quests are everywhere and quite valuable, there are secret unlockable characters, one of the series' best soundtracks, and for those of you who were terrified that the best feature of Breath of the Wild would not make it in, you needn't worry. The dye shop is back, and you are free to recolor that Hylian hood any color you want. My only complaints are actually that the game is too short. I really would have liked more opportunities to use the different character combinations. Aside from that, the game's pretty darn near as good as it could be. It's 10 times what I hoped it would be, and my hopes were pretty high to start with. Breath of the Wild 2 is just gonna be nuts. The lack of AAA titles I play this year is almost a travesty. I didn't even manage one new traditional or adventure-based RPG. You'd think this was one of the worst years of gaming I have ever had, but if the list so far is anything to go by, that couldn't be too much further from the truth. I was up and ready for a big year full of AAAs back in March, and started out with a few classic licensed titles I'd never picked up. Since I loved Spider-Man PS4 so much, I might as well try the games it ripped off of, the games that inspired it. I did think they would be decent games at least, but if you told me all that time ago one of them would be the best game I played this year, I would have probably been greatly surprised. I mean, it depends very much on what game I was in the middle of at that time. Asylum had a lot of atmosphere and very little else. The bosses were awful, it lasted twice as long as it should have, and there was way too much platforming with terrible physics for it. And while the comp system has a lot of hidden depth, the severe lack of variety in the enemies made combat boring really quickly. Obviously, it's not on this list. Well, there's only one obvious choice then. Arkham City is one of the most famous licensed titles of all time. Had dozens of wars thrown at it like candy, including Game of the Years, boasts incredible systems of combat, stealth, and upgrades, and is pretty fantastic. But here's the thing. Arkham Knight came out to mass disapproval based on lack of famous villains and side quests, an awful PC adaptation, a garbage 100% completion requirement and reward for said requirement, and one of the most obvious plot twists of all time. Under all that weight, I feel like nobody ever bothered to look at the game beneath it all, because, based on my personal experience, it kind of makes Arkham City into nothing more than a kindergarten class. First, let's clear up the problems. The lack of major side quests is only slightly disappointing. The main storyline being so incredible certainly makes up for it. And the DLC adds 4 major villains as parts of the new side quests, along with a ton of bonus missions and episodes that allow you to play as unique characters, so that's fun. And the side quests that are available are actually really quite good. The first time I reached a random rooftop and was greeted by Man-Bat hit me harder than any jump scare any horror game has given me. You still should avoid the PC edition at all costs, but the game plays perfectly on consoles, and that's how I played it, so I don't care. I also really don't care about getting 100% on video games. Very few of them are designed where that is necessary, and it actually might have annoyed me if the reward for it in this game was really good, since it would require so many hours of my life. But those who do love this game to the ends of the earth thus have almost 50 hours of content to chew through if they so wish. And even though the twist is obvious, it works perfectly within the game and universe's story. Makes total sense for the characters involved, the character involved in this plot twist is well developed, and oh yeah, the entire rest of the story is one of the best of anything Batman has ever done. I feel like that is lost most of the time in the face of this plot twist, but even with the dark turns it takes, this is still one of the most engaging and well-told stories of the Batman franchise. Comics included. And I'm a big Batman guy, so that's a really high praise. games. The way they work Joker into this game as an extension of Batman's psyche is just so brilliant, and to provide so many story and world-building opportunities that the game takes full advantage of. The gameplay is deeper than it has ever been. The Batmobile's honest to RC is one of the most fun to use vehicles of any game I've ever played. The stealth is upgraded, then inverted, then upgraded again. The new mechanics serve only to improve everything the game is doing. The map is bigger than any previous in the cities, reaching almost 30 times the size of Arkham cities, and there's a ton of crap to do in every section. The detective sequences are vastly superior and make you feel like the actual Batman going through actual data in the actual Batcave. All weapons are now utilized freely, rarely being locked into certain uses or areas, and as for the enemy design, well, normal thugs are one thing, but there are several different types and combinations of militia units located in environments suited specifically to make your life harder. The brilliant gameplay gives you dozens of ways to take them down, but unlike previous games, these guys get smarter the more you fight and the higher level you get. It is quite disarming to alert a single guard to your presence, hide in the shadows like you've been doing to beat up people for the past 3 games, and have your location picked out immediately, the tides turning after a single shot. Tactics do not always work the same way on these guys, and that's what makes it so much better. There's a lot more to this game, and I can honestly pick it apart for over 15 minutes with all the good things I have to say about its level design, combat mechanics, and upgrade system. But the bottom line is, don't let mob mentality prevent you from enjoying a video game. There is so much good to be harvested from Arkham Knight, and still people refuse to believe it's even capable of being a quarter as good as Arkham City. Preconceived notions are a more dangerous enemy than any plot twist in the world. I'm LittleZbot, and even though I hadn't played many AAA games this year, I feel like it has to be mentioned that every single end of your list I've done so far has ended with a AAA at number 1. I'm just saying, I love me some indie games, but for this year I really didn't have a choice, did I? After all, you can play in the Adam West costume. Gazooks, Batman! That's way too powerful.